Welcome to Faith, Fiction, and Folklore, or as we like to call it, the Try-F Podcast, where we try not to have the podcast up. Well, today we've had a bit of a chaotic night. I apologize. It's mostly my fault. I set a new goal to reschedule the time for the podcast, and I was still late. That is my bad. But anyway, Trevor and Cody could not be here tonight, so you're going to be stuck with my pretentious butt for the evening. Congratulations. And tonight we have three specific subjects. Number one, I was able to catch some interesting lights over the week. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the situation, basically for the last 3 years, and I've complained about them multiple times on the podcast, there have been these strange orbs, I guess you could call them, hovering over my house. And I have, as of yet, been able to catch them, which I guess has made my testimony very suspect. However, this week I was actually able to catch the trashy things. And so I wanted to actually show them to Cody and Trevor and, actually get their thoughts on them. Like, what are these lights? What could they possibly be? Then it turned out they couldn't make it, and I spent all this time building a video to show them, a collage, and I decided that no matter what happens, I wasn't going to do all that work for nothing. So I'm going to put the video out on the internet tonight and see what you all think. And since part of this is going on a podcast, I guess I will be narrating what I'm showing on the camera. So we'll spend the first few minutes talking about these mysterious lights. And then, Trevor brought my attention to an interesting fellow last week. I'm going to slaughter his name, but Abdullah Hashem. And apparently people are calling this charming individual the new Antichrist. But is he the new Antichrist, or is he a communist plant? Or CIA plant? Or communist plant? It's the same thing. Anyway, so we're going to talk about this fella and look at one of his charming little sermons. And then we will end the night with something that's kind of a pet peeve of mine. I've also brought up in the podcast before how I don't like how people always pick and choose from firsthand sources when it comes to folklore, like actual historical accounts. One example of this would be vampires. So I thought, since I get so annoyed at people constantly retelling the story of vampires and kind of picking and choosing what facts were odd, I thought I would go over one of the first-hand accounts of a vampire from 1725, Peter Blagojevich. And so I thought we'd look at the report on that individual that came out way back in the day. And I thought that would be a good lead-up into the Highgate vampire. Now, I should point out that about 3 weeks ago at this point, we had promised to do more stuff on the Freemasons and Wes Huff. Now, Wes Huff had there was a question Michael Knowles presented to Wes Huff, and he was basically asking if John, the story of the adulterous woman, should be in John. And I kind of have an idea what Wes Huff is already going to say, because I know the standard textual criticism line. But I wanted to refute that if he says what I think he's going to say. But the problem is doing that sort of stuff takes research. I've done the research before, but I don't have any of my sources backed up. So I wanted to make sure I had everything backed up and crossed my T's and dotted my I's before I actually went into refuting kind of the standard textual criticism narratives in any sort of detail. So we're going to hold off on that until I'm actually ready. But we haven't forgotten about talking about the Freemasons more, and we haven't forgotten about about refuting the rest of the Michael, or talking about reacting to the rest of the Michael Knowles and Wes Huff video. So, with all of that being said, we're going to begin with these mysterious lights I recorded in the sky. Thankfully, I talked during some of it, so I don't have to react to everything in real time since nobody's here. So you'll have to give me a couple seconds here while I actually pull up the video. I should have had this a little better prepared. Thought I did, but I didn't. Anyway, what I'll also be doing is I'll be pausing and kind of like recording and re-recording stuff on it because yeah, I thought that would be the most efficient way to do stuff. So hang on here. Unfortunately, this thing is going to war with me, which is really annoying. And it is not pulling up what I want it to pull up. There we go. It was just being stupid. Okay, so let's look at this. This is all in cell phone footage anyway. So, okay. Wait a minute. What are you doing? That's not the one. Sorry, guys. I wish I was faster. So, okay. Here we go. Take 37 while I'm doing that. Jessica. Hello, Jess. Thank you for replying. So I'm not all by myself. Hang on a minute. Good night. Yeah, Jessica says, heat. Yay. Sorry, autocorrect sucks. I agree. It does suck. It does suck indeed. Okay, now I'm ready. Gotcha. Okay, so I never do this, but for the first time in 3 years, I've actually been able to catch these lights that have been going off in the northwest. So I'm going to show you the skyline there. The stars are about done. Oh, I actually think that's one of them right now. I don't know if you can see that or not because I'm not looking at the camera. This is a screen camera instead. So these lights, assuming you can see that, have been going off and on for the last 3 years at the house. Now normally I'm not able to catch these things because it's too dark. I hope you're able to see that. I don't know if you could. But yeah, normally I'm not able to catch these things. But the moon is bright and there is a faint overcast of like kind of a vaporous clouds. So you can still see the brightest stars, and therefore you can see these things when they fade in and out. I have been trying off and on to get these things, and if I actually get this stuff created in post on time, then you're going to see basically lights fading in and out of the sky and all that good stuff. I'm mainly making this video to prove that, you know, I'm out here and that I actually recorded it and this isn't something I found from somebody else or whatever. But yeah, these things have been out here for a while. I'm not sure what they are. I kind of think they're drones, but I'm not sure. Anyway, the point is, you know, I finally was able to get them. The UFOs or UAPs or whatever. So hopefully I really hope you guys got that shot of the thing coming in while I was talking. I don't know, because it was the screen camera, so I don't know what it actually caught. But anyway, we'll see. I just wanted to come out here. My goal now is to just basically smoke my cigar and wait until airplanes and stuff. Oh, there's another one. Let's see if I can catch it. I don't know if you can get it. Let me try to flip the... There she is. Yeah, that's the beauty. That is what I have been seeing off and on for the last 3 years. That's really awesome that I actually got that while I was talking. Neat. That makes me a very happy camper. There is a fainter light there in the distance. That's the star. You can kind of use that as a point of reference. Basically, these things look like stars, and they can't possibly be airplanes or anything like that because they move, not all the time, but generally speaking, they move at a 45-degree angle up into the air, and then they fade in and out. And they do this constantly. So now I'm going to stay out here and finish my cigar and try to find airplanes as they go through the sky, because I want to basically use planes and stuff as a point of comparison so you can compare the lights out here versus what an airplane looks like on the same horizon. So I'm going to stay out here and keep smoking my cigar, and hopefully a plane will come by and we can use that as a point of reference. But yeah, that's pretty neat. I am extremely excited. Guys, I have been trying to catch these things for forever, and the conditions have never been right to actually get them. But it looks like we got them tonight, so... Oh, there's another one. There she is. Let's see if she'll fade out. Is she going to do it? Yes, she did. And she is gone. That's awesome. Oh, my... No, that one was too quick. Fast. A lot of the videos you're going to catch, if I actually make a compilation, some of the clips are only going to be about 5 to 10 seconds long, because that's how long they're in the sky. About 5 to 10 seconds. They come in, come up at a 45 into the sky, and then they fade out, and it can be anywhere from 10 to 15 to 20 seconds, which sounds like a lot of time, But when you're trying to get your camera phone on and catch them before they fade out, that can be kind of a bugger. And then if the conditions in the night aren't right, that makes it even harder. So I just wanted to make this video and gloat a little bit. This is 3 years of trying to catch these things. Finally got them. I'm extremely happy. So, all right, guys. This will be going on the podcast Saturday, unless Uncle Sam gets me. Ha, 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 ha. Dark humor. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Oh, my goodness. There's another one. Maybe. I can see it with my eye. It's extremely faint. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be able to see it. I got a glimpse of it. No, that's the star. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. I've already got like 50 of these things already. There were 2, so I was hoping to catch that one. But anyway, it doesn't matter. All right, guys. Thank you so much. This will be going on the podcast unless Uncle Sam gets me. Ha, ha, ha. Another one. Are you going to do it? Are you going to show up for me? There we go. Beautiful. Well, kind of. Anyway, well, either show up or don't, buddy. I think the overcast is finally getting too thick. Yeah, because that star is getting harder to see. All right, anyway, doesn't matter. Guys, thank you so much for watching. And, oh, there's a plane. Let's get a shot. Where are you at? There we go. So there's a plane for a point of reference. That's what a plane usually looks like out here. I don't think it's going to fly in exactly the right spot to show you the angle, but that's what a plane typically looks like out in the sky. So you can clearly see these are not airplanes at all. So you can even see the chemtrail that's not a chemtrail up there. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. Probably can't, but I can see. Yeah, you can kind of see it on the camera. But yeah, that thing's shooting a chemtrail. Yay. Oh, no. I have turned into a conspiracy theorist. Oh, well. What are you going to do? Anyway, so I'm super happy. I'll see if I can catch more. And then I'll try to, again, catch... there it is. There's the airplane shooting across the sky. They obviously blink and look much different. So, yeah. Personal opinion, I think they're drones, but whatever they are, basically from approximately May to October, they're out here. Of course, that could be just because I'm out here as long as it's warm, you know, smoking cigars and stuff, and then when it gets too cold, I go inside. But anyway, yeah, so this is what I've been seeing on my evening walks during the spring, summer, and early fall for the last 3 years. It's been driving me up the wall. Anyway, that's it, guys. We'll post this Saturday and see what you all think. So, let me talk to y'all later. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully you found this interesting. Bye. Check, check, check. Can you hear me now? That is absolutely infuriating. I blasted knew there was a problem, and I kept trying to fix it, and it just wouldn't... Nothing was cooperating with me. This has been an absolutely awful night. Anyway. Okay, so I let that video play earlier of me talking, and the point of that video was to basically, check. I wanted to, compare the camera to the... I wanted to compare the camera to the... like the camera on the screen, the cell phone screen, to the actual main camera on the phone. And show how dark it is on one and dark it is on the other. And the main point of playing that whole thing through is really to kind of just communicate how blasted hard it's been to catch these things. And even in some of these videos, you can still barely see them, but they are there. So, yeah, I'm basically putting these videos out here, trying to see what anybody's thoughts are, see if they know what they are, if they have any opinions about what the lights might be. So, anyway, I'm just going to let this continue to play for a few minutes, and we'll just keep going on. So there's a light there behind the tree. Jessica Lambert says yes. I guess I should pause and say, yeah, there's a light there by the tree, by the way. I guess I should pause and say, thank you, Jess. Jess says the video was cool, though. Sorry, the video was cool, though. Since I was on mute, I guess I will go ahead and read Mushroom's comment again. Mushroom said, the destruction of spiritual beings, such as asuras or demons, is often depicted in Hindu mythology as a necessary step in maintaining cosmic balance and order, although this destruction is not necessarily permanent and can be followed by rebirth or a transformation into a different form. And then Mushroom says, I am become UFO. I think he means I have become UFO. So, either way works fine. Anyhow. So there's the light, and it fades out again. Same thing, it's behind the tree here. There's another one. I think this one, you have to really zoom in to see, but from the human eye, you could see several of them kind of popping in and out, kind of higher up above the tree, but it looks like the cell phone footage, oh, there's one. Looks like in the previous one, the cell phone footage was too faint. All right, let's see. Let's go ahead and skip ahead because I think it's just the same series of lights from the same angle. There's another one. Just barely caught that one. Okay, yeah, that one. It shows it flying behind a tree. Let's skip ahead a little bit. There's another one. You can hear a plane coming. I'm hoping to try to catch the plane so you can see it as a point of reference. That's not the plane. That's the star, I think. Hang on just a minute here. There's the plane. Yeah. Yeah, so as you can see, that light is very different from the lights that we've been watching for the last 15 minutes. Or 19 minutes. So. Alright, anyway. There you go. Just as another point of reference, you can see a plane in almost the exact same spot where those things are appearing and disappearing. It's very faint, but you can see it blinking there. And since it's in the exact same place, I'm just showing it to kind of point out that, yeah, these are not airplanes. So, okay, all right. Okay, so that is the video, everybody. If you have any thoughts as to what those things might actually be, I am all ears. Like I said, I don't think they're aliens. They're a little too regular for anything like that. I suspect they're drones, but I really don't know. So if anybody has any idea as to what they think those things might actually be, that would be awesome. And that is going to conclude part 1 of this thing. Honestly, since we had so many technical difficulties at the first half of it, I don't even know if I'm going to air this episode. I'll have to see it after the live stream, kind of cut it up and see if I can make something out of it. But we'll see. Anyway, even if I don't, we will upload this cell phone footage for people's interest. And if they have any opinions, that would be great. And if they don't like the fact that it's all cut up, I'll just load up all the individual footage raw. And people, including all the times I missed them. I was like running to try to catch them and missed them. Anyway, so yeah. So now it's out on the internet and people can give their opinions. And that will wrap up episode 1. We're not ending the live stream. We're moving on to part 2. So if you are watching the live stream, stay with us. And if you are watching this after the fact, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Okay, moving on to part 2. So let me repeat the intro here. Welcome to Faith, Fiction, and Folklore, or as we like to call it, the Triad Podcast, where we try not to mess the podcast up. And today, Trevor has brought to my attention a very interesting, if not somewhat disturbing individual, Abdullah Hashem. And people are claiming that Abdullah Hashem is the Antichrist. So, that's odd. But I thought we'd take a look at some of this charming individual's material and see if we had any strong opinions about him. So let me readjust my windows because they're being goofy again. Everything. I don't even know why I try to prepare for this show, because every time I try to prepare, OBS just scrambles everything back to the way I didn't want it anyway. But anyway, it's not like my computer's possessed. Anyhow, so here is a lecture from Abdullah Hashem. I should actually point out first that it's kind of funny. When I first saw this guy, of course, you know, every time I watch much of anything, my first thought is CIA. And so I just assumed this guy was a CIA plant, particularly because apparently he started poking up around, making a big noise around the Arab Spring. And then I watched Rustlin KD, and he was saying the same thing. This guy's a CIA plant. And then he had Jay Dyer on his podcast, and Jay Dyer was saying he's a CIA plant. And I don't agree with Jay Dyer on much, but I agree with him on that. So I thought we might watch Rustlin and KD and Jay Dyer talk about this charming individual and how the CIA sets up cults. But anyway, so people are thinking this guy's well, Christians are saying he's the Antichrist, and I guess Muslims are saying he might be the Mahdi. The Mahdi? I don't know. Mahdi from Dune sounds, yeah, I'm sure, anyway. I'm sure that had nothing to do with each other whatsoever. But anyhow, so let's take a look at this cute little sermon here from Abdullah Hashem. Okay, note number one. If you're chanting to a guy dressed in black, you're probably not the good guy. Like the beanie. So if this guy is the Antichrist, then we can confirm that the not the Illuminati, that hipsters will destroy the world. That's very, very Tim Pool-esque, but anyway.
Bismillah al-Wahid al-Qahar. وصلى الله على محمد وآل محمد الأئمة والمهديين. All those who would enter.
Do you know what's really fun? Making a website on.
Hey, look, an ad.
Hey, where? To go in. And when the Arabs mocked Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, never comes a messenger to them, but they ridicule him. And nothing has changed today. The 12 Imams alayhim salam have warned and said, when Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam emerges, he shall not have a more clear enemy than the religious scholars. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam said, if the riser, the Qa'im, emerges, there shall not be between him and the Arabs and the Persians except for the sword. And
so did these guys replace the turban with the hoodie or the beanie? Like, why is everybody in the black sock cap thing?
The Imams also said the Mahdi would come at a time when nothing remains of Islam except for its name, and nothing from the Quran except for its writing. The people would call themselves Muslims, but they are the furthest thing from it. O people, don't depend on these non-working scholars and false prophets to guide you to the truth. Don't depend on these scholars and preachers of religion that Jesus called vipers to guide you to the truth. Don't depend on these scholars that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam called the worst of God's creation under the sky. Lanatullah alayhim. Reject them and rebel against them. They are the enemies of God and his messenger. They are the killers of the prophets and messengers and imams. Institutionalized religions are controlled by the devil. And I'm trying
Said the man behind a podium. But anyway.
to set you free. These serpents and snakes have led you so far astray and so far away from the essence of religion that you no longer know what your faith is even about. The Jews imagine it to be about upholding the rituals and the commandments of the Torah. But what good did that do for them when Jesus Christ, their Messiah, came to them and they handed him over to the Romans to crucify him? And what now? They have been left without a Messiah and without a prophet and without a messenger, without a divinely appointed king, and without a holy judge for 2,000 years. In fact, the only Messiah that Israel follows is a false Messiah, America. It is America that defends Israel, not God. And it is the American...
Does anybody actually think America's the Messiah of anything? Especially right now. I mean, who exactly thinks America's a Messiah? Okay.
System of democracy that Israel upholds, not God's laws and system. God has turned his face from them because they turned their face away from him through their rejection of Jesus. Shall I now become Jewish and follow the rabbis and scholars of Judaism? No. Jesus said about them, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You build tombs for the prophets and decorate the graves of the righteous. And you say, if we had lived in the days of our ancestors, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. So you testify against yourselves that you are the descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Go ahead then and complete what your ancestors started. You snakes, you brood of vipers, how will you escape being condemned to hell?" The Christians imagine their whole faith to be about believing that Jesus died for our sins. They say that it is sufficient and enough. Am I to imagine that Jesus, alayhi salam, left the Christians without a shepherd? No. When the Bible says...
Well, the shepherd is the Holy Spirit, and, the Bible, that, it's not like you're without a shepherd. Don't think the shepherd would be in a beanie either, but okay.
Woe to the worthless shepherd who deserts the flock. Shall we believe that no prophet was to come after Jesus when he himself said, "Therefore I am sending you prophets and sages and teachers. Some of them you will kill and crucify"?
He didn't say that. He didn't say any of that. He said he would send the Comforter, which is the Holy Spirit. He didn't say he was sending more prophets and all the rest of this. Like, that's not what he said, guy. Like, okay. Number one tell if you're dealing with a false prophet, they get incredibly obvious facts wrong because they're trying to, compromise of, 37 other religions and denominations and whatever.
Others you will flog in your synagogues and pursue from town to town. If religion was completed with his crucifixion, what is the need to send more prophets and sages and teachers? If religion was completed with his crucifixion, why does he even need to come back? Are we supposed to surrender?
Well, you would know why if you'd studied the religion. That's kind of obvious. He's coming back to set up his kingdom on earth. That's what Christians believe. So why ask a question like that when there's an easy answer to it? Like, you just have to, study the religion.
Surrender this earth to the powers of evil and darkness and war and bloodshed and believe that Jesus only came for the hereafter?
I cannot get over the uniform chanting here. It's like, no. What's that line from the Mummy? Emotep. Emotep. Again, if you're saying everything in a monotone voice in unison and you're all dressed in black, particularly if you're dressed in black beanies, you're probably not in the right team. Just a hint there.
If Jesus came to only die on the cross, why did he ask for God to remove the cup from him? If Jesus' kingdom is not of this world, then why is he coming back again? Shall we?
Okay, well, he's asked to not have the cup removed from him because, crucifixion would be painful. And again, he's going to establish his kingdom on earth. That's what Christians believe. That's the standard orthodox answer. You could refute that answer if you don't agree with it, but why present it like a rhetorical question when there's an obvious standard answer to that question? He is talking to a bunch of people who he knows are unfamiliar with Christianity. And so he is presenting these questions as if they are obvious, and apparently people are so blinded by their faith they can't answer obvious questions. But that's not what's going on, because there is a standard answer to that question. He just knows they don't know it, so they're just going to assume Christians are stupid. So this guy is a liar, which is a telltale sign of a false prophet.
We then just allow Satan to control this world in the meantime? No! The preachers are lying to you. Jesus ﷺ has always had successors to guide his church, starting with Simon Peter. Jesus did send another prophet. His name was Muhammad, the messenger of Allah. The true Christians.
I don't understand how people are not creeped out when they hear stuff like this. Like, I find that legitimately creepy. Like, Christians, they sing songs, they'll do doxologies that have like a specific meaning, but, there's usually like a preacher leading them through the doxology, and there's like specific statements being made. This kind of like brief chanting type of thing where it's like, ha, whatever the words are, ha, whatever the words are. It's just like, it's basically very CIA cult-ish, because that repetition is just there to kind of get you into a like lethargic state, so you'll like accept the presuppositions. You're not reciting scripture, you're not recalling anything from your memory. You're just chanting brief bursts, brief little statements in unison, so that you'll kind of get into this apathetic, lazy state. Like, yeah, I can totally see how the CIA built this, but anyway.
Awaited him and recognized him and followed him. That's why Bahira, the Christian monk, recognized Muhammad, and Waraka ibn Nawfal, the Christian scholar, recognized Muhammad, and Salman the Persian accepted Muhammad, and the Christian king of Ethiopia, Najashi, accepted Muhammad, and the Christians of Najran accepted Muhammad, just to name a few. Instead, you follow a false prophet named Paul. Paul, who never met Jesus Christ, who killed Christians. Paul, who fought against Peter and the disciples, who called them hypocrites, who changed the laws of Jesus and ordered and commanded.
No, that's not true. Like, Paul and the apostles got along, as is demonstrated by the council in Jerusalem, where some people were mad because Paul was saying that, Gentiles didn't have to follow the Jewish law, and other people were saying that the Gentiles did. In the end, the apostles sided with Paul. They said Paul was in the right, and they gave a very minimalistic list of rules for the Gentiles to follow. So, no, Paul did not refute the apostles. In fact, the apostles sided with him during the controversy in the Jerusalem Council. So that's factually inaccurate. Read Acts. Again, if you're going to pretend to be the true arbiter, like the logical guy or the next step in a religion or whatever you're trying to frame yourself as, it helps if you study the religions you're trying to replace, pal. Again, this is not debatable stuff. Like, this is like really clear, obvious. Nobody argues about this, and the only reason this guy would say something like that is if he hadn't read the book at all. So this guy doesn't have his facts straight. He's a false prophet, or more likely a CIA plant. I mean, look at that beanie. I'm sorry, they found him in a coffee shop, I swear.
Obedience to the tyrants. Paul, who wrote half of the Bible and invented the modern-day version of Christianity. Don't believe me? Because you say I'm Muslim? Go ask the Jewish rabbis. Go see what they have to say about Paul and his corruption of the Hebrew Bible
But you
and
just
twisting
got done
of his
complaining
verses.
about the rabbis.
Christians are afraid to look into the Quran or the message of Islam because of Paul. After all, it was Paul who said, "But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach a gospel other than the one we preach to you, let them be under God's curse." Funny that a man who fought...
This is really strange because earlier in another video when I was like trying to prep for this, this guy claimed that he was the actual Pope, and then people got spooked because Francis died shortly afterwards, and then this dude took credit for it, which is a little silly. It's like, yeah, like something bad happens, and then some random religious leader goes, "Ha, that was me." I don't know why anybody would believe that's actually the case. But anyway, people were frightened because he claimed to be the new pope or the true pope, and then Francis died. But I don't know what the point of that would have been because they just picked a new pope recently. And if he's complaining about Christianity, why would he want to be the pope anyway? Now, see, that's a rhetorical question. The truth is he's full of crap.
Christians and killed them and never met Jesus, writes half of the Bible, and then warns the Christians of anyone else who preaches a gospel other than his. Christians, I say to you what my forefather Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam said to the Christians of his time. I confirm faith in Jesus and his book and everything that he informed his nation of and everything that the apostles accepted. I am a disbeliever in every Jesus that doesn't accept the prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his book, the Quran. Yes. The Jesus that doesn't recognize Muhammad is the Jesus of Paul. The Jesus of Peter and the apostles gave glad tidings of a...
That doesn't make any sense. None of the apostles... Muhammad, even by their own theory, wasn't even alive yet. What's his point? Anyway, so I guess, I don't know why people are calling this guy the Antichrist. Cody Bocephus. Mr. Cody says, "Oh snap, am I a Muslim person?" Nah, you're just very confused. Anyway, so, yeah, I don't know what the deal is with this guy. I mean, look at that beanie. I swear that, I'm going to say it again. They found him at a coffee shop. This is ridiculous. I have a hard time believing this guy's a Muslim, let alone an Antichrist. But I guess I'm a little confused as to why Christians are calling him an Antichrist, though, because he's like a leader of a whole other thing. Paul's beta. Shush. Paul's alpha. And you're a silly person, Cody. Anyway. Yeah, and he was complaining, just to give you an idea, Cody, and he says, Jesus is alpha. Okay, I agree with that. But just to give you an idea of how nonsensical this guy is, Cody, he was sitting there saying that the apostles, like Paul challenged the apostles and Paul disagreed. When the apostles took Paul's side during the Jerusalem Council, they were on the same page. So this guy doesn't even understand the Christian religion. Anyway, so yeah, this guy, he clearly doesn't even understand Christianity. I don't know why he's trying to refute it. But more to the point, though, I'm telling you, the CIA found this guy at a coffee shop, and Jay Dyer's going to talk a little bit about that. And so is Russell and KD. So let's switch gears for a minute and see what they have to say about all this.
In your coverage of the Mahdi, what do you make of the guy? You think he's a method actor? You think he's sick in the head? You think he's tapping into some actual demonic forces?
Fully involved or somebody else in the background? I think it's very sus, and I think there's probably some intelligence background, especially with Arab Spring.
For real, you think your videos about the Mahdi and said you've done some coverage on it, and we just covered the Mahdi, and they responded to us. His cult podcast, the official religion website, YouTube responded to us. In your coverage of the Mahdi, what do you make of the guy? You think he's a method actor? You think he's sick in the head? You think he's tapping into some actual demonic forces that are potentially helping him do these miracles that he's alleged of doing? What do you make of it?
It's funny you say that because the first thing I noticed was the airbrush image of himself. It looked like DJ Khaled.
DJ Khaled
who is that in the background?
Without any gray in his beard, by the way. Right, it's just like he looks removed, 10 years younger in that.
I mean, I think it's, first of all, it's preposterous, like on the surface, and then you notice it's like a weird. He's got these icons around him that look kind of Catholic, kind of Orthodox, and then he's got a giant bust of some dude that looks like a Caesar bust, but looks like an accountant.
I thought
it's
it was Phil Jackson, the Lakers basketball coach.
Exactly. It looks like, yeah. I was like, why do you have a bust of like an accountant or Phil Jackson there? So weird aesthetics going on, and then like, why are you wearing a beanie? And then he actually gave an explanation of the beanie, which I thought was funny.
That's hilarious because he's connecting with the working man.
Exactly.
You said
so
that was
like
Zach Sparazzo's job.
Right, yeah, with that jean. He's got full jeans, right?
He has his Canadian tuxedo
jean
on.
shoes over there. He's got jean socks, dude.
Okay, I wanted to pause on that. I guess I don't know if they're going to bring up the quote or not. I don't think they are. But yeah, when the guy was asked about his beanie, he said he was representing the working man. Now that should tell you right there he's a commie plant, because that's like just communist verbiage. I mean, in South Africa, for crying out loud, they have people dressing up in their workers' uniforms, you know, to represent the lowly everyman. Like anytime somebody uses that language, that's called a tell. This guy is not actually a Muslim. I don't think Muslims even have that verbiage. So that should tell you he's totally like some liberal out of the CIA found out of a Starbucks shop, and they're basically using him to start a cult. I'm telling you, this guy is totally like, and I'm not an expert on accents. I don't even pretend to know about that sort of thing. But is there even the faintest hint of an Arabic accent of any kind coming from this guy? The dude sounds like he's coming from Southern California. So I'm telling you, this dude's a Fed. But anyway, we'll see what Jay Dyer has to say about that.
Out of it, but
how about that 9-foot stage where he's like
exactly
hovering over there like this?
I noticed in Cameron's video too, he did a really good, the Cameron Bertuzzi, when he did the breakdown of like his background and the Arab Spring stuff is a huge.
Cody Bocephus says, I like Jay. Him and I would not get along, I don't think, but I'm glad you like him. He's got some good points. He's on Alex Jones quite a bit.
Red flag, because he was a mega activist in the Arab Spring, which if you go into the history of Arab Spring, it's promoted by Western intelligence. There's a great book that deals with some of that, Full Spectrum Dominance by F. William Engdahl. Really good book. Good introduction to geopolitical stuff from an academic perspective if people are interested, because I get asked all the time, where should I start? That one's a good one to start. But I think that it's also a clear engineered mix of perennialism, Neoplatonism, all of which I've read and studied pretty extensively, and Shia stuff. And Shia Islam is very amenable to Sufism, very close to Sufism, which is Neoplatonism. And the advantage of Neoplatonism is that it's kind of a skeletal thing that allows you to pick and choose from the world religions. And that way you can say, oh, look, all these world religions, they're actually my superstructure Neoplatonic religion, and you're all just manifestations of kind of the pieces that I have as the full picture. And a lot of cults do that. A lot of religious movements are clever enough to latch onto.
I'm going to butcher this, but Frank Turek has a analogy he uses in his lectures that's kind of to the same point. Oh, I don't remember the name of it, but it's basically the blind man and the elephant. You've got a bunch of blind men around an elephant. One grabs a trunk, says the elephant's a snake. Another grabs a leg, says the elephant's a tree. Another grabs an ear, says the elephant's, I don't know, a bird or a blanket or something. And they're all grabbing pieces of the elephant, saying the elephant's different things. And then there's some guy who's looking at all the silly blind men going, no, that's an elephant. And it's kind of a logical fallacy because, of course, everybody who takes on this kind of Platonist religion that Jay's talking about, everybody's assuming they're the only one that can see. So there's a lot of arrogance behind that. Nobody wants to admit that they're the blind guy grabbing the random part of the elephant. Everybody thinks they're the guy that can see the whole picture. And it's just kind of a way to, these kinds of religions, these kinds of cults, they're just a way to feed into people's egos. So anyway.
So I think it's definitely some kind of op engineered, whether he's fully involved or somebody else in the background. I think it's very sus, and I think there's probably some intelligence background, especially with Arab Spring.
For real, you think he might be a CIA agent?
Well, I don't know about CIA, but it's very likely that it could be something like that.
Wow. Yeah.
I'll say the CIA because everything's the CIA. Oh, hang on.
In your coverage of the Mahdi, what do you make of the guy?
Is a huge red flag because he was a mega activist in the Arab Spring,
yeah.
which, if you go into the history of Arab Spring, it's promoted by Western intelligence. There's a great book that deals with Neoplatonism. And the advantage of Neoplatonism is that Neoplatonic religion, and you're all just manifestations of kind of the pieces that I have as the full picture. And a lot of cults do that. A lot of religious movements are clever enough to latch onto that. So I think it's definitely some kind of engineered, whether he's fully involved or somebody else in the background. I think it's very sus, and I think there's probably some intelligence background, especially with Arab Spring.
For real, you think he might be a CIA agent?
Well, I don't know about CIA, but it's very likely that it could be something.
Can I just complain about the word sus? Like, I use it too, but I'm really mad that we're getting too lazy to say suspicious, so we just say sus. It's just acronym culture is kind of annoying, but anyway.
Like that.
Wow. Yeah.
Or abbreviation culture. That might be more accurate. All right, I'm done.
Yeah. The Arab Spring stuff was weird. We talked about that a bit too. That's a tail sign that something's going on.
Something in the background.
Yeah. And so what would be would the intelligence connection be a correlation or causation to what he's doing now?
Again, just going on gut analysis, spending a lot of time studying cults and religions and the overlap with intelligence stuff, because they have a lot of interest in cults and religions. Mm-hmm. In fact, I might even write my next book on religion and intelligence.
Okay.
We've done a lot of lectures in the last few years on that specific subject matter because very few people go into that. People don't know that the state has a vested interest in wanting to make churches forms of what's called soft power.
Control and
yes,
domination.
Your phone is listening
That's
to you.
the goal
No,
of
you
all
can't
power
believe the
systems.
news.
They can be resisted and should
All
be.
right.
And soft power is a way to, if you're the state or if you're a superpower, to extend your influence in other cultures through non-kinetic warfare. So you're doing it not with guns and tanks per se, but with culture. Hollywood has been a very powerful engine of Western soft power. You know, I mentioned writing about James Bond in the Cold War. Bond was a form of projecting Western soft power to other nations in the Cold War, right? So you've got these Soviets, they're tyrannical, they want to lock you down. James Bond represents, Western masculinity, capitalism, free love, all these kinds of things that Bond is supposed to represent. So likewise, intelligence agencies are very interested and have always been interested in cults and religions. Crowley was a spy, as we said.
Well, here's a question for the audience. Is free love an aspect of Western civilization, or did that come out of something that the hippies were reading? So just posit that or throw that out there for somebody to answer if they so choose.
Many New Agers. Madame Blavatsky, there's really good. She's the mother of all the New Age movements. There's a lot of good evidence to suggest that she was also a spy. She worked with the KGB. One of her handlers was actually a KGB guy. So I think that it's very possible. It's very likely. I don't know for sure, but the Arab Spring activism definitely suggests a possibility there. There have been a lot of connections between the CIA that not many people know about and like Shia and Sufi movements. CIA's made a lot of contacts with Shia movements. You can look into the history of the Naqshbandi, and they were relevant because they were involved in drug trafficking. I'm not saying that this dude is connected to the Naqshbandi or these orders, but in situations like the Cold War, a lot of times the Western intelligence operatives found it beneficial to make alliances with Muslims for the purpose of fighting Soviets. So like the most famous example is 1979 Soviet conflict, where Brzezinski and Carter, Robert Gates, they all openly wrote about and strategized to use Al-Qaeda against the Soviets. And so they armed them, they funded them. It's called Operation Cyclone, well-known, it's declassified. In fact, Max Blumenthal wrote a really good recent book on this subject matter called, I'm not paid to promote anybody, I just have these with me. So his book's really good, Management of Savagery, which is Western support for certain Islamic sects. And that can be Sunni, sometimes Shia, and even can be cults and weird groups like we're talking about with this guy. Now,
Interesting.
not proven, just...
I will say this for Jay Dyer. Kudos to all those bookmarks. That is a lot of sticky notes. I am jealous. All right, guys, if you want to finish this video, the video is the Antichrist and CIA connection no one is talking about. And then it has at Jay Dyer. This is on Rustlin KD's channel. So, do I think this gentleman is the Antichrist? No, but I bet he has a Starbucks card. So, all right, we're moving on to episode 3. So if you're on the live stream, stay with us. If you're watching this after the fact, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Okay, so let me lead us into the episode 3, next part. So welcome to Faith, Fiction, and Folklore, or as we like to call it, the Try-F podcast, where we try not to F the podcast up. Okay, so on this episode, I thought, since really we had to scramble and kind of figure out, or I had to figure out what in the world we were going to talk about, I decided to kind of grab at a random subject that has been of interest to me over the years. It's always been something of an annoyance to me that when you're looking at anomalies in history, people will pick and choose facts that they want to highlight on. So in the case of the vampire, do I believe in vampires? No. But I don't have any clue what was actually going on. So, you know, the people that actually claim to have seen these things, the details, the individual, like the little... Basically, their anecdotal accounts, the things that they claim happen, you know, all the details in those claims are actually important. But what historic, like scholars and different people will do is they'll try to interpret history by basically picking and choosing these facts. So, because these guys basically have a naturalistic paradigm, they'll find all the things that are basically in line with their theory and highlight those details that correspond to their version of events, but they'll ignore all the details in the accounts that don't. So in the case of the vampire, what a lot of these people will sit there and say is they'll be like, oh, well, these people in 1725, they just didn't understand decomposition. They didn't know anything about, you know, how bodies rot, even though these people were scared to death of plagues. I would imagine they were intimately familiar with the process of death, and the idea of conflating the decomposition process with a vampire, frankly, is flat out stupid. Now, do I have any idea what was actually happening back then? No, not a clue. But I wanted to actually kind of go over some of the firsthand sources, because I think that's important. I think you need to actually review firsthand sources for yourself to try to come up with your own opinion about what you think happened. So this is just for my own amusement because we try to get 3 segments done for each live stream. So we're going to go over one particular firsthand account of vampirism. So let me start off by going through this website really quick and just kind of scanning the article here. So I don't know how much you can see because my window's crap, but the article is True Vampire Sightings, Historical Accounts, and Modern Claims. This is by Alexander Michaels from August 7th to 2024. And he just lists some of the early reports of vampires. So we've got number 1 in 1509, the shoemaker of Breslau. I'm not going to try to say these names right. The prowler of Pinched, also destroying that. The peasant vampire, that's the one we're going to be looking at. This would be in 1720. Yeah, so this is the peasant vampire, 1725. We're looking at this one. This is the story of Peter Blagojevich. I don't know how much you guys can actually see. Let me actually readjust my window here because it's being stupid. So I apologize, but you guys need to be able to actually read this along with me. So let me do that and then try to fix my windows. Yeah. I love OBS. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. So this is number 3. This is the one we're going over. The peasant vampire in 1725. In 1725, Peter Blagojevich, a peasant from Kishinev, Serbia. I know I said that wrong. I apologize. Was buried within 9 days. 9 locals was buried. Within 9 days, 9 locals died, claiming on their deathbeds that Blagojevich had returned as a vampire, draining their strength. Blagojevich was said to have even killed his son by drinking his blood. When his grave was opened, his body appeared fresh with blood in his mouth. A stake was driven through his body and blood spurted from his mouth and nose. So I'm mentioning this because, the term vampire is somewhat loose, and people will equate things like in pagan lore, like Greek mythology, to modern day vampire, and really specifically like vampires as we understand them, as the type of vampire Bram Stoker was writing about. It came from these stories from the 1700s specifically. So these are dead relatives attacking family, drinking blood, that kind of thing. So you've got 1725, the peasant vampire. And then in 1726 through 1732, the monster of Medeva, Dracula's bride, the Coventry Street vampire, historical context of vampire sightings, and then he goes on. And yes, the New England vampire panic. And this one we're actually going to be going over probably next week or eventually. I have it pulled. We have a teaser for it pulled up. This is the Highgate vampire. This is the last, real known vampire, supernatural vampire incident that I'm aware of. This took place in the 1970s, and basically in the Highgate Cemetery, people started seeing the shadow thing of red eyes floating around the cemetery, and people started claiming that there was something drinking blood, and then an exorcist got involved, and some other guy I can't remember the name of got involved, and then the media got involved, and it turned into a giant frenzy. And it, it incited a lot of interest in vampires and stuff. And the exorcist claimed to have actually killed the vampire. And then, of course, shortly thereafter, the attacks stopped. So I thought we would go over that incident here in the next week or so. All right, and then we've got kind of the lame version of vampires now. We've got real-life vampires in New Orleans revealed. Individuals who believe they need to drink blood for health. These self-identified vampires. In other words, gothic people. But anyway. So, yeah, as far as I know, the Highgate vampire is the last, actual incident of vampirism that I think has been taken seriously. If there's others, I'm not aware of them. So if you are aware of them in the chat, please let me know. All right, so with that said, let's see. AI says that in order to read the account of Peter Blagojevich, you need to read the report by the Imperial Provisor Ernst Fromblund. And I guess this appeared in this newspaper, the Wien-Schnitzendarium. I know I'm saying that wrong. Anyway, the word's right there, and the link's right there. Just type in, where do I read firsthand accounts of Peter Blagojevich, and you'll get that newspaper. So, there's that. And here, let me adjust my windows again. Hang on a minute. I don't know why this book thing is a little annoying, but this is what I could find. That's the other thing that I do find kind of frustrating, is these accounts are actually very difficult to locate. That's one of the reasons I was late. It took me forever to even find this. When I was first doing research on this topic, it wasn't hard to find the first-hand accounts because, it's public domain. It's literally... These writings are 300 years old or 200 years old. So, yeah, it's not super 300 years old. It's not super difficult. At least at one point in time in 2016, 2015, it wasn't super difficult to come across this stuff. Now it is. And one version of this account was found behind a paywall of all things. But I didn't try Internet Archive. You could try Internet Archive and see if this stuff comes up. But anyway, let's kick this off. So this is a copy of a writing from the Grants district in Hungary, Copia Insis, and basically this is the district, and this is by Frumbald, 1725. This is a copy of the letter. Okay, it says OBS was disconnected. Okay, so we're reconnected. Apparently there was lag, but I guess I'm back. Anyway, boy, this has been a weird night. Anyhow. So, essentially, this is what makes these accounts so compelling, is it's not just villagers and, locals who didn't even know how to read or write or whatever. Like, these are like judges, these are like court officials, people who were like soldiers who'd seen death and decomposition. Like, these were experienced people with authority that were writing these accounts. And so, it's another reason why the whole, well, these are just dumb, ignorant peasants. Like, that's another reason why this doesn't work, because these guys were involved in exhuming some of the bodies and things like that. And they knew what to look for. So anyway, let's just jump right into this. In 1725, in the village of Kisilova in Serbia, then considered part of Hungary by the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the administrator of the district, a so-called Frumbald, wrote a report describing a vampire case. Frumbald's original report is either lost or at present unknown. Only a copy exists in Vienna in Hans Hostarchy. This is just a little bit of foreground information about it, which I think we've already discussed a couple times. The report was published without comment in the July 21st, 1725 issue of the Weinschnarzen Diarium under the modified and fairly uninteresting title, Copy of a Writing from the Gradiška District in Hungary. So, after a subject by the name of Peter Blagojevich had died, 10 weeks passed. He lived in the village of Kisilova, in the Realm district, and had been buried according to the Retzian custom. It was revealed that in this same village of Kisilova, within a week, 9 people, both young and old, died also after suffering a 24-hour illness. And they said publicly, while they were yet alive, but on their deathbed, that the above-mentioned Peter Blagojevich, man, I'm going to have a problem with that, who had died 10 weeks earlier, had come to them in their sleep, laid himself on them, and throttled them, so that they would have given up the ghost. They'd have to give up the ghost. The other subjects were very distressed and strengthened even more in such beliefs by the fact that the dead Peter Blagojevich's wife, after saying that her husband had come to her and demanded his opanki, or shoes, had left the village of Kisilova and gone to another. And since with such people, which they call vampires, various physical signs are to be seen. That is, the body decomposed, the skin, the hair, beard, and nails growing. The subjects resolved unanimously to open the grave of Peter Blagojevich and see if such above-mentioned signs were really to be found on him. To this end, they came here and to me, and telling me of these events, asked me and the local pope, or parish priest, to be present at the viewing. The peasants' custom of referring to priests in such districts as popes survived well into the 20th century. And although I at first disapproved, telling them that the praiseworthy administration should first be dutifully and humbly informed, and its exalted opinion about this should be heard, they didn't want to accommodate themselves to this at all, but rather gave this short answer: I could what I wanted, but if I didn't accord them the viewing and the legal recognition to deal with the body according to their custom, they would have to leave the house. They would have to leave the house and home, because by the time a gracious resolution was received from Belgrade, perhaps the entire village, and this was already said to have happened in the Turkish times, could be destroyed by such an evil spirit, and they did not want to wait for this. Since I could not hold these people from the resolution they had made either with good words or with threats, I went to the village of Kisilova, taking along the Grant's Pope, and viewed the body of Peter Blagojevich, just examined, finding in accordance to truthfulness that, first of all, I did not the slightest odor that is characteristic of the dead, and the body, except for the nose, which is somewhat fallen away, was completely fresh. The hair and beard, even the nails, of which the old ones had fallen away, had grown on him, and the old skin, which was somewhat whitish, had peeled away, and a new one had emerged from it. The face and hands, I just lost my spot. Excuse me. The face, hands, and feet, and the whole body were so constituted that they could not have been more complete in his lifetime. Not without astonishment, I saw some fresh blood in his mouth, which, according to the common observation, he had sucked from the people killed by him. In short, all the indications are present that such people, as I've remarked above, are said to have. After the Pope and I had seen this spectacle, while people grew more outraged and distressed, all the subjects with great speed sharpened a stake in order to pierce the corpse of the deceased with it, and put this at the heart, whereupon he was pierced. Not only did much blood completely fresh flow, also through his ears and mouth, but still other wild signs, which I passed by out of high respect, took place. Finally, according to their usual practice, they burned the above-mentioned body in ho-kasu to ashes, of which I now inform the most laudable administration, and at the same time would like to request obediently and humbly that if a mistake was made in this matter, such is to be attributed not to me, but to the rabble who were beside themselves with fear. And so this is the same article in, what does it say here? German. So, all right. And there's other accounts like this. Yeah, there are other accounts like this, but it's important to note that, it's not just, hair and eyes and fingernails growing and all of this. It's basically like new skin and the fresh blood thing. Of course, again, these guys, they were around death, like quite often. So, yeah, they would understand the difference between congealed blood or blood in a corpse and like fresh blood. So when they say that, you can take their word for it. There are other accounts more extreme than this. For example, one guy, and I don't remember the story. I'm sure it's one of the accounts that I just mentioned, like one of these here, said that whenever they tried to pierce the guy with a stake, he literally grabbed the stake and said, "Thanks for the stick, now I have something to beat the dogs with." So there was a lot more going on at the time than just, seeing longer hair and growing fingernails. Like, the guy didn't say the fingernails had continued to grow. He said the old nails had fallen out and new nails had replaced them. That's a very different claim than what's usually presented in, like, these History Channel documentaries and such. So I wanted to briefly read that report, and there are others like that. We may go over them in the future. I don't know. It depends on how interesting this subject turns out to be to people. So, with all that said, let me see if I can find an account of the Highgate vampire, and we'll wrap this episode up. Let's see. I thought I already looked that up. Give me a moment here. Let me type this in. All right. So we'll just pick one of these at random. This, I think Slapped. Okay, this YouTube channel is called Slapped Ham. It's a little silly, but this guy usually does give pretty good synopses of stuff that's happened, in my experience with him anyway.
The legend of the Highgate vampire.
So we'll see how this
separating
goes.
Fact from folklore. In the shadow of the bustling city of London, a sinister tale of the supernatural has captivated and terrorized its citizens for over half a century. Among the moss-covered tombstones and Gothic monuments of Highgate Cemetery, an eerie figure is said to lurk, its hypnotic red eyes waiting to ensnare unsuspecting victims. This chilling apparition, known as the Highgate Vampire, has become one of the most fascinating and controversial urban legends of modern times. But what is the truth behind this blood-curdling story? And how did it evolve from whispered rumors into a full-fledged supernatural saga?
All right.
The first documented accounts of the Highgate vampire date back to the late 1960s, when reports of supernatural occurrences began to circulate in the local media. However, even before the vampire sightings, strange events were already taking place in the area. In 1967, two teenage girls walking home alone Swains Lane near Highgate Cemetery reported witnessing a chilling sight. the dead rising from their graves near the cemetery's north gate. In another instance, a young woman claimed to have been awakened one night by a cold and clinging sensation on her hand, only to find prominent marks there the following morning. Reports also circulated about a tall man in a hat who was seen wandering the area before seemingly melting through the cemetery walls. By the early months of 1970, the situation surrounding Highgate Cemetery took a darker turn. Several animals were discovered dead in the vicinity, their bodies drained of blood and bearing what appeared to be lacerations on their throats. These gruesome findings fueled speculation that a malevolent supernatural entity, possibly the Highgate vampire, was responsible for the grisly attacks. Witnesses described unsettling encounters with a tall, dark figure with glowing red eyes lurking amongst the tombstones of Highgate Cemetery. As the story spread, they fueled the imaginations of paranormal investigators and thrill seekers who flocked to the cemetery in the hopes of catching a glimpse of the mysterious apparition. Enter David Farrant and Sean Manchester. In 1970.
Okay, so Sean Manchester, that's the exorcist. There's actually some interviews with him that we might look up at a later time. There's also some stuff with David Farrant, but I kind of feel like Farrant's a little more into the melodrama of it, you might say. I'm not so sure about Manchester in that regard, but anyway. But there's interviews of both men. We might compare their accounts and see if we can get kind of a consensus as to what really happened, if anything really happened. But yeah, this is one of the more interesting, I guess, internet mysteries out there. And it's really the last, yeah, like I said before, it's like one of the last actual vampire accounts that I'm aware of. But anyway, let's go on.
72 charismatic and self-proclaimed vampire hunters, David Farrant and Sean Manchester, entered the scene, each claiming to have the knowledge and expertise to banish the malevolent being from Highgate Cemetery. Farrant, the founder of the British Psychic and Occult Society, and Manchester, the bishop of the Old Catholic Church, became entwined in a bitter rivalry that would come to define the Highgate vampire legend. Farrant was the first to claim that he had seen the vampire while conducting a paranormal investigation in the cemetery. He described it as a tall, dark figure with hypnotic, glowing eyes. Manchester soon followed suit, alleging that the creature was a medieval nobleman named Walthuff who had dabbled in the dark arts and was buried at Highgate after his execution. The tension surrounding the Highgate vampire reached a fever pitch in the lead-up to Friday the 13th of March 1970. Both Farrant and Manchester had made bold claims of an imminent showdown with the vampire, and their sensational statements had spread like wildfire through the local community and media. Earlier that evening, ITV had aired interviews with both men, as well as others who had reported supernatural encounters in the cemetery. The broadcast only served to heighten the anticipation, and within 2 hours, a mob of hunters from all over London and beyond had swarmed the locked cemetery. As the clock struck midnight, the group, now numbering in the hundreds, broke into the cemetery, igniting the chaos that would come to be known as the Great Vampire Hunt. Eyewitness accounts from that night describe a scene of pandemonium as people trampled graves, damaged monuments, and blindly pursued any sign of the elusive vampire.
I do want to say, I do think it's being a little disingenuous about what's going on. People were not actually hunting for the vampire. It was a lot of hype and media circus and probably just punk kids wanting to see what was really going on. But anyway, they've got the names of the figures right. If this is something that interests you, we can go over it in the future. If not, then we'll just move on to something else. But not that we don't have a lack of things to talk about. But we're done talking about things for tonight. So, guys, I am going to wrap it up this evening. Thank you all so much for watching. Give us some feedback on this one. If you want to hear more about the lights, let us know. If you want us to do more like reading of first-hand accounts of vampires or any other weird thing that went on, let us know. And if you want to hear more about the Starbucks Antichrist, let us know. So, all right, we are wrapping up the live stream this time around. So, Guys, for the last time tonight, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.